In today's photography review show, we're gonna review images from 26 photographers. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of our photography review show. For those who don't know me, my name is Jakub and I'm a professional photographer based in West Sussex, England. Now, for the last 2 or 3 years, I've been reviewing photos for my colleagues and friends, and this is the reason why we decided that we're gonna introduce the same for our photography community here at Clever Photographer. Now, we've been thrilled by the interest, and this is the reason why we had to limit a little bit the entries to 1 or 2 photos per photographer, and the same reason why we also take this show and divide it between the 3 parts. First one, we usually look at the landscape photographers. Second one, we look at the mixed theme photographers, and in the last part, we usually look at the other parts and other themes that we receive. So, things like portrait photographers, travel photographers, wildlife photographers, and so on. Now, before we want to move on, we want to remind you about 2 things. First is our new Facebook group called Clever Photographer Academy. It's a group where we talk all things photography, we review your photos throughout the week, we do regular photography competition, we answer your questions when it comes to photography, and we have a lots of fun there. So make sure you head to the Facebook and join us at Clever Photographer Academy. The second thing we want to ask you is to make sure that you like, comment on this video, and that you follow us so we can create more of the content like this. But now we don't want to hold you any further, so let's jump straight into the reviewing. And welcome back to the Lightroom. You are at the right place if you're back for the second part of our photography review show. Right now we're going to be looking at the photographers who send us a mixed theme of photography, sometimes as a portrait, sometimes as a landscape, sometimes as a wildlife, and they are together and they don't really slot in any of the photography styles we have in the other parts of the show. So we have 8 photographers to look at, so without any further ado, let's jump straight into it. So first of all, we have Nikki here, and Nikki sent us 2 pictures. So we have this kind of boat on a shore of a little lake, and then we have this tight picture of a flower. So let's talk about it. Let's jump straight to it, Nikki. So starting with this one, I'm just slightly confused because it looks like it's a double exposure. It looks like you have the flower and then over it you have exposure of another flower, which itself is quite a nice effect and pleasant effect. However, the scene is a little bit confusing. No, overwhelming is the word, I think. I think it's a little bit difficult to kind of get your head around what exactly is happening there. I wonder how you done it, if you just kind of blend 2 pictures on top of each other, or if you actually took picture of 2 different things and then maybe you take a picture of the picture. I just wonder how, yeah, but anyway, so it's kind of like a macro photography with double exposure. It's interesting, not 100% my thing, but I understand the idea of it. Moving on, this one, it's a lovely boat on the side of the lake. There are a few elements which I think makes it just a little bit too busy for us, like this kind of pole here. I think that doesn't need to be here. I think also if you would have gone a little bit down and show us a little bit more of the horizon, it would make the scene just a little bit more deep. It would add to the depth. But to start with, is not a bad thing. So let's jump to the actual technical point of view. It's a little tricky on this one. Let's have a look if we have any information about the actual picture. And sadly we don't. I tell you what, Nikki, also another problem is the actual size of the image. This one has a 262 kilobytes. So if I zoom in to maybe check your sharpness, I really don't get too many details. I get lots of pixels, which is just a little bit tricky. So next time if you send us the pictures, make sure that they are a little bit higher quality. In overall, the parts which I see are sharp. The light seems to be quite nice and diffuse, so that works quite all right there. It's a quite pleasant combination of the colors. The yellow and white works quite well for me. Again, just a bit difficult to see. I also see a little bit of the kind of colorful halo around. Let's see if we could actually remove it in Lightroom by clicking on Remove Chromatic Aberration. And it removed a little bit, but not everything. But I think that's something what I would look at, because you can really see it. Well, once you look at the picture for long enough, you can see how it kind of glows in different color. But it's just something to kind of see in. Otherwise, technically, it's quite all right. It's a shame we don't have the information about the photo. I could tell you a little bit more about it. Now on this one, everything is sharp here. I'm seeing a little bit of a noise when I kind of zoom in. Again, it's a smaller kind of image, but I see fair bit of noise in the kind of darker areas. So that's something to keep an eye on. Let's see on the exposure. So you see anything what is not black is overexposed and it lost the details. So obviously just something to keep an eye on for the future. Make sure you underexpose a little bit or focus on more kind of darker area, the camera, so the camera can focus a little bit easier. So that's just about that. Now talking about composition, the yellow color has a quite nice composition. With the white flowers, it becomes a little bit busier. As I told you already, for the effect, yes. For the composition, I think the yellow would have been enough. For this one, I already told you I would go a little bit lower and show us a little bit more of the actual scene. That would add a little bit of depth for the picture, and it would help a little bit with the overall composition. Now, when I'm looking at it, I think this pole and this pole, you see, when you see the boat and these wooden poles, it kind of create quite a romantic scene. Once you start to mix it with the electricity pole and with some chains, it kind of takes a little bit of the magic away. So personally, if I would have been there, I would try to capture it more like this, maybe with a little bit more landscape that way, and just kind of move around. Just personally, my thought. When it comes to post-processing, this is all about post-processing. The double exposure is interesting, and I think you have a lot of green in your white balance. I wonder if we would push a little bit the purple, if it would help. We can also take this picker and just find a white, and you can see how much of the tint was pushed. Usually when there is too much of the same color on the photo, like in this case there is lots of green, the camera seems to kind of really overtake and put the green tint into everywhere. Same with like a lots of blue sky, it's a similar thing, something to keep an eye on. Other than that, maybe a little bit of vignette would have helped, just to bring the attention towards the center of the photo, and that's it. On this one, I almost wonder how it would look if it would be a black and white. And I think you could actually come out with something very interesting here. That would be one suggestion. Obviously, you could do a little bit more editing there. Let's see if we would push the contrast, if we would just crop it a little bit differently. Reset this, and let's see. Again, take care of this, and maybe this. It's a bit too tight, so maybe like this. Add a contrast. Maybe add some clarity, and also tilt it a little bit, and I think maybe you would get something quite interesting. Yeah, the black and white is not necessarily a bad idea for the picture, because the colors aren't crazy. That would be one thing you could do. Again, keep an eye on white balance, because when I do the auto, I think you get lots of blue tint on the actual boat, and that's about it. Yeah, I mean, again, just maybe next time you could write a little note about what was the idea behind the picture, so I can help you a little bit more, Nikki. But either way, thank you very much for sending your photos. I hope it was helpful. Think about the composition a little bit, and send us more pictures so we can more understand your style and what's your photography about. Okay, moving on the next photographer. Next photographer is David Goodman. David, looking at your photos, it really feels like I saw your pictures before, and I feel like I reviewed them before as well. Let's quickly have a look. 18th of October, David Goodman. David, I saw your pictures and reviewed them. Now I'm going to put in the corner of the screen a link to the video where your review is. I'm also going to put it in the actual description so it's easier for you to find it. And I hope it's going to be helpful. I'm not going to go ahead and review it again. I think it would be a waste of time for you and me as well. So make sure you check it out. Anyway, after that, let's move on. Jaime Sanchez. Jaime, you sent us several pictures. I'm sorry we can only do 2 at a time. So if you have more, make sure you send them next week. Also, make sure that you select the ones which you really want us to review. So that way I don't have to maybe avoid any of the ones you would really like to hear the feedback for. So I pick up 2 pictures out of the whole thing. Obviously there is a portrait of the lady with quite nice light, I thought. And then I have this quite good picture of the group of the people. I pick up this one because, to be honest, it's quite tricky to photograph a group of people like this. I think you've done very well here. On this one, again, I like the light. So let's jump to it. Jamie, starting with the crop and everything, I quite like the picture. Again, this is kind of sepia look. I think it works quite nice. I think it creates quite nice atmosphere. The light, it was either natural or not. It works quite well here. I think technically it's well captured. I think it's a little bit of a shame that we getting the picture in really small kind of quality, because as you can see, it's really pixelated. However, I can see that it's sharp. I can see that it's quite naturally done, the editing, so it's not kind of glowy. So that's quite cool as well. The lines are nice and sorted. I like that as well. A really nice kind of shadows. So that's cool. As a composition for this one, it's quite nice posture. I think it does a favor to the model. The dress is very nice as well. The head works quite well as well. I wonder why you went for the sepia look, because it's not as trendy anymore really in today's day and age. It used to be very popular a long time ago. Now it's now it's not as popular. You want to really work with the natural colors, or if not, then going for black and white. However, it's quite cool. I can't really say that there is much I can add to it post-processing wise. I think it's very well done as well. Maybe if it comes to the actual portrait, I would maybe take a little bit of time and try to remove some of these things to take a little bit to take them away and make it just a little bit cleaner. You know, it doesn't really take that long to do it. And that way you can keep the focus on the actual girl rather than on the broken wall or whatever. That would be just me. It's not necessarily to do it, but I think it would be helpful, Jamie. Jamie, on the second one, again, I think you've done a great job here. As I can see in the foreground, probably quite difficult light here. I think the one thing which is shame is that it's all kind of tilting on the side. So I wonder if you could have just used the geometry in Lightroom. Let's see. Something like this I think would be helpful. Let's see for the cropping. I would definitely have cropped away the really bright spot on the front. So then you get something like this. And when you look at it like this, I think it's super cool photo. Well done on that. I quite like the editing. I like the kind of bright shirts popping out, the colors popping out, and everything else to be a little bit tuned down. I think it works very well, Jamie. So well done on that. Well done on positioning the ladies. And in overall, this is a great photo. I'm very happy with it, and there is not much I can tell you on it. Of course, you could do a little bit more kind of dodge and burn and maybe help to it to pop other things up. But again, it's a little bit tricky for me to judge it because of the quality, you know, 406 kilobytes. When I zoom in and start to really look for the details, I almost can't see the faces. So Jamie, I think the main message today is if you have more pictures you want us to review, make sure you send them in a better quality, because that's really gonna help us to make sure we give you the best feedback we can. Anyway, keep shooting. You're doing great. I love your photos. I can't wait more of them in the future. I can't wait to see more of them in the future. Moving on, Janos. Janos, I also feel like I've seen some of your picture before. If not, then I'm wrong. However, lovely black and white photography. Let's jump to it. So we have this kind of girl arriving into the scene with quiet kind of texture, black and white, with some heavy darks and nice brights. So well done on that. And then we have this kind of crop of a view with the bike and with the street. So, Janos, let's talk about it. First of this one, I can see lots of noise happening, especially on the face of the girl. You see when I zoom in, let's have a look if we have any information. And it's a big photo as well, so there shouldn't be that much of a noise. So I wonder if you have added some noise in a way of like a grain to make it more grungy, or why did you end up with so much noise in her face? Other than that, let's check out. I'm also looking at the whites, and you can see everything what's on a picture white. Opposite, whatever is in a black is burned out and overexposed, so you lose the detail in it. So just keep an eye on exposure to make sure that you keep the photos as in as good quality as you can. Otherwise, technically, I think everything is sharp. I quite like the light. It kind of works for this street photography. I think it's well done. So good on this one. Composition, really interesting. I like how the woman arriving. There is lots of leading lights there. There is really nice contrast. I like what you've done here. I would maybe keep an eye on the cropping. You don't want to be too tight, but I think in overall this works quite well, Janos. Talking about the next one, I'm a little bit lost, to be honest, and I think it's because it's just lots happening in the scene. You're not sure if you're actually looking through the window or if you're standing in front of the window. Where is exactly the bike? There's a car, there are some poles. It's just lots happening here. Also, I can see that there are some kind of lens distortion happening right here. Let's see if we could actually work with that. You can a little bit, just to make sure that everything is kind of straight. Let's see if we can do any of the corrections. No. So that's maybe where I'm a little bit lost of the whole idea. I think I really like tight cropping when they work, but sometimes it just gets overwhelming. I think this lamppost also doesn't really add anything, so just something to work on, Janos. Technically, there is nothing really wrong with it. Again, I would just make sure that I'm keeping an eye on the exposure. Again, you have spots which are kind of burned out, although this time I think it's a light and that's some kind of white part. So keep an eye on exposure. That's one thing. And then the sharpness is fine here. Also keep an eye on the noise. 1250 ISO is quite high. Obviously, the higher you go, the more noise you're going to introduce into your pictures. Just something to kind of keep in mind. When it comes to post-processing, I quite like it. I think you have a quite nice signature. I like your look. This one is more kind of in a gray editing, more natural feel. This one is more the kind of grungy, noisy, sharp, dark, contrasty edit, but it works quite well for me. So Janos, well done. Send us more pictures so we can see more of your photos. If you have a time, make sure you join us in our new photography group at Clever Photographer Academy. We have over 200 members. We review photos throughout the week. We play photography competition and have lots of fun, so make sure you join us there. Okay, moving on the next photographer. Let's do this. Let's have a look. Karen Hauser. Karen, two pictures from you. One with a bird right here and the other one with the lovely autumn landscape. So let's talk about it. Let's have a look right here. So this is quite nice scene. I quite like it. I'm personally a big fan of reflection when it comes to landscape photography because I think it really adds a beautiful feel to the overall photo. Shame for this piece of wood here. I think it takes a little bit of the attention away, which is a little bit a shame, but in overall it's a lovely image. Looking at this one, it's a lovely capture of the bird, but there is a lot of noise in the kind of overall feel of the photo. Let's have a look at some of the information. 4000 ISO, that will be probably the answer why. So let's jump to it. Karen, so technically I quite like what I see when it comes to the sharpness. I think the light is quite nice and interesting as well. I think obviously the bird has something in the mouth, so it's a lovely capture. However, when you bring that much noise by 4000 ISO, obviously it will really distort the picture. It will bring a little bit of a softness, and it takes lots of beauty of the image away. If you would print this, it would look like it's almost blurry. So shame for that, Karen. Let's have a look if we can maybe help to it a little bit in the post-processing bit. If we would maybe do a little bit of details and noise reduction. Can we actually help to it? To some degree we could. And then if we would do masking, yeah, maybe at least like this, just to see this is the before. After, you see some of the noise goes away, but not completely. 4000 ISO is a lots of noise. Obviously, the rule in general is the lower the ISO right here on your camera, less of the digital noise and less issues later on. To some degree, usually around 1000, more like 800. ISO, you can really work with it in your post-processing. Once you get over the 1000, the noise will just stay there. It will be very difficult to remove it. Technically talking about this one, I really like how The trees are sharp. I think the reflection is quite nicely captured. There is quite nice light there. It's a shame that it's just a plain blue sky. I wish there would be a little bit of texture in it, maybe with some clouds or something like that, but in overall, technically, it's quite well done, this picture. Talking about composition, it's a shame that the picture is a little bit too tight. I wish there would be a little bit more space. In overall, I think the trend now with wildlife photography is to capture these animals with a bit more space around them, as obviously they are wild animals. The overall feel is that they are free in a space, so try to stay away from these really tight crops. But it doesn't matter, it's still a lovely, lovely photo, and composition-wise, I think it's quite nice how it's kind of standing on the branch, facing at least into the empty space. Well done there. On this one, I think you are tilting a little bit. So if we would just have a look at the geometry and help to it a little bit, I think that's it. Maybe just a bit more here would be helpful. Again, when it comes to composition, I think it's a shame for this tree. This is something we call the confusing foreground elements, and it's basically anytime there is a piece of branch, tree, people, lamppost, houses, cars, when they don't start in a picture and they don't end in a picture, it's just a bit confusing for the viewer. That's just something to kind of keep an eye on. Personally, I would have probably tried to crop it away and do maybe something like this, and then crop it from the other side, and you would just end up with something like this, which is much more balanced and much more natural composition. So that would be just me. Anyway, when it comes to post-processing, I think this one is done really nicely. I love the pastel colors. I think it's a very natural edit, and I think it works very, very well. Nothing really I can add to it. Again, I would do the crop a little bit differently. I think when you do a reflection like this, it's really nice when it's kind of almost in the middle of the image. So I would just push it down a little and maybe do something like this. But that's about it. On this one, keep an eye on the colors. I think you have everything a little bit in a green. So let's see if we would just use the auto as a white balance. And we don't want to make it that blue, but maybe just something like this to keep an eye on. And otherwise, nothing much. I would maybe just add a little vignette to close the picture and bring the attention towards the bird. And it's lovely. Karen, thank you so much for sharing the photos with you. It was lovely to see them, and I hope to see more pictures from you in the future. Moving on, the next photographer, Mark Robin. Mark, I have 2 pictures here. So let's have a look at them. This obviously is some kind of macro photography. I hope I'm right that it's a leaves with water on them, but there is some really heavy editing on them because they almost look like they are painted with the brush rather than captured by camera. Let's have a look if we have some information. We do. It's a Nikon D7200. Okay, it's interesting look, Mark. And then we have this picture right here with the river and the birds on the top. And my first impression, I think it's a shame that you're missing part of the boat here and then part again here. And then I can see lots of sensor dust in the sky. So obviously here, here. Something really to kind of work on. If you're gonna go in the description of this video, you can see a tutorial on how to remove the sensor dust really easily in Lightroom, and hopefully that will be a little bit helpful for you. So David, once you remove the sensor dust, we can actually look at the rest of the images. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about this one. With the kind of effect you apply to it, it's a bit tricky for me to tell you about the sharpness. There is quite nice light on the picture. Quite nice depth of field with some parts being really kind of in focus. It's very, very interesting, but it's kind of stepping away from being a real photography, Mark. I really like the effect. I really like the image, but to tell you more about the technical parts, I can't really do so. I think you have a quite high ISO, just something to keep an eye on for the future. Obviously, lower you are, more closer to the 100, less of the digital noise comes across and less to edit later. When it comes to this, again, there is no details about how you capture it. Keep an eye on the sensor dust and keep an eye on your ISO again. There is a little bit of noise coming left and right. Talking about composition, it's quite nice. You know how the leaves are kind of coming over each other. I think that works quite well. When we talk about composition here, I'm not 100% sure about it. Obviously, one of the composition rules when it comes to landscape photography talk about the confusing foreground element, which are parts of boats, cars, lampposts, trees, and I think in your case, it kind of fits there. You want to have a little bit, at least one of your foregrounds needs to be in a full shape or something really easily recognizable so the viewer have it easier. I think the sun works very well. I really like the star on it. That's really well captured, but just something to keep an eye on. Post-processing, the sensor dust is one thing, and then I would keep an eye on the geometry. Let's have a look. No, that's too much. So maybe we just have to do it in cropping, something like this. Again, also keep an eye on your white balance. Because some part seems to be really bright on this picture, so keep an eye on white balance and keep an eye on exposure. Let's check out white balance and auto if it's gonna help us a little bit, maybe just a touch. The picture is kind of, there's not much color in it, especially around the sky and the kind of background. So something what you can do is to turn it to black and white and then maybe work on it from there. And that's it. So Mark, I'm sorry I couldn't be more helpful. It would be great if you could send us more pictures so I can tell you more about what to do. Also, you can maybe tell us more about what's the story with the leaves, how you did the edit and how you achieved it. Anyway, Mark, thank you so much for joining us. I hope to see more of your pictures in the future. Until then, take care. Moving to the next photographer, we have a Sabine. Sabine, you sent us 2 photos. And this picture I reviewed last week. Let's have a look, Sabine, just to make sure that I'm right. When I look at last week's picture, it's exactly the same. It's just tilting a little bit, and that's probably because I already adjusted the touch. But it's here. So if you have a moment, make sure you head to our last week's video. It's the part with the landscape photographers and you can get your review there. But anyway, let's move on the picture of your dog here and let's have a look at it. So just one thing to keep an eye on again is the sensor dust. I can see one right here, and it's so common when you take pictures on the beach that these things happen. Obviously, there is a lots of kind of water and dust and so on happening. So just something to keep an eye on. Really easy to remove with using the sensor dust removal tool. And there you go. So just done, just to keep an eye on. Maybe there is more there. Look at that here. 1, 2, maybe. And then when we switch it off and go on, yeah, that's helpful. So after that, let's technically, it's quite nice. Let's go and see if we have any details. No details here, that's a shame, but when we go a little bit closer, again, there is a sharpness all the way through the animal, which is brilliant. I actually really like the reflection. I think that works really well as a composition. I think it's very lovely. Obviously, it's kind of a little bit overcast and moody, the picture, but I think that actually adds a little bit to the photo, as the dog has a warm colors on him or her, and that creates nice contrast with the kind of just a really monotone background. So I think in this case it works very well. I really like the posture. I really like what you do there. When it comes to the cropping, I would go just a little bit more up. So you kind of work with the reflection, the way that your reflection is right in the middle of the photo. And other than that, it's lovely, Sabine. I wouldn't add much more to it. So as always, Sabine, I really like the style. I really like what you're able to do with the dogs. I think the reflection is a really nice touch. It's really lovely to see how you're moving forward with everything, including the composition and overall look. So well done, and keep pushing yourself, and make sure you send us more pictures. So moving on, we're gonna go to the next photographer, which is Sorin Marcus. We have 3 pictures from you. To be honest, I already reviewed this picture for you in the actual group, so let's look at 2 of those photos right here. Where did we get lost? So right here. So we have a picture here and picture here. So let's talk about them. First, an overall impression. On this one, I quite like it. It's really nice, kind of scene in. Everything is nicely shaped. There is a really nice light created with the ceiling light. I can see the details outside of the windows. Well done on that. It works very nice. This is more kind of documentary portrait, picture. Obviously, I really like what you've done here. I just think it's a shame that maybe the things are not straight, but that can be really easily fixed. So let's talk about it. So let's talk about those two photos. I think technically, let's have a look if we have any details. You can using your Nikon ISO 100. Everything is set right here. So the light is nice. There is great exposure, details all the way through. I really like the fact that you can see outside. This is technically very, very well done, Marcus. This one, I really like the depth of field. I like how you're focusing on the person. I would have gone maybe a little bit down to see more, the bigger part of the body. As you can see, the boy is kind of disappearing, a little bit sinking into the actual picture. But other than that, I think it's really cool. The light is actually quite pleasant for being inside. The depth of field again works. It's all sharp. It has lots of details and it's very, very lovely. Moving on the composition. So the composition is very good here. I really like what you've done. I like the height you are in. I like how you kind of looking inside of the room. I would keep an eye on the geometry just to make sure that you are straight. Just really simple fix here in a Lightroom. On this one, same thing. I would keep an eye on geometry, so that really nice sorts the room for us, and they give us a chance to crop it just a little bit to get clean and balanced composition. So maybe more something like this is what I would do. Again, you bring in more attention towards the boy, but other than that, as a composition, it's actually very interesting. I wish the face would be turned a little bit more towards you so we could see more in the face of the person, but in general, I quite like it. Post-processing wise, I show you already a little bit what I would done. Obviously, a little bit of vignette, I think again helps. Here as well, a little bit of vignette would help. Keep an eye on the white balance as always, but I think it's actually spot on here. And let's just check it out here. Let's say we just kind of click here and then we push a little bit of the yellow. Actually, you spot on there as well. So overall, Sorin, well done. It's a great pictures. I really like this one. I think it's very, very interesting. This obviously is a lovely interior shot. However, I think this one is again a little bit different than what we see every week, and I really like the capture. So Sorin, thank you very much. Thank you as always for being with us in the group. And thank you, and we hope to see more of your pictures in the future. In overall, folks, the same goes for you. If you want to join us here for the photography review show, make sure you head to our website at cleverphotographer.com/review. That's where you can find all the dates. That's where you can find all the links where you can upload your photos and have lots of photography fun with us. Before you go, make sure you hit the like button, comment, and follow us so we can produce more of the content like this. Thank you very much for joining us, and until next week, keep shooting.